Random art tips and rambles with Rafi.
Hola, you amazing artist. It's Rafi.
And Klee.
Today we are going to talk about galleries. We're going to talk about galleries. Klee just recently got into a gallery.
Yes, I did.
We already are in a gallery. We're at Marty Campbell Gallery, and you got into Quayside.
Quayside Gallery, which is a co-op gallery.
Quayside, or as I like to call them, Quayside. That's how it's spelled. That's how I'm going to call them. I know they don't like it, but...
It's an old world spelling.
Quayside Gallery. So the main thing I wanted to talk about and get your thoughts on, Klee, was there's a lot of news out there about the galleries are dying, that the gallery system is just falling apart due to the internet and the fact that artists can now go directly to the customer. The customer could come to the artist instead of having to go to the gallery.
In other words, the times, they are a-changing.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, that's true in every area. The times are changing and we have to adapt.
We definitely have to adapt. What I've been thinking about is the fact that like the old way that the gallery system is set up is really set up for failure. They're not set up to move with the times. It's kind of like when the first music was getting shared online and all of a sudden the music industries were like scrambling around.
Yeah, they totally freaked out.
Yeah, and they were like, no pirating, no this, no that. They were set up in a way where their system was old school. It was set up to sell CDs and 8-tracks, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when CDs started to phase out and, with every major like thing like that, like tapes, CDs, it goes on for a while and you think like this is cutting edge and this is going to be around forever. But the truth is, even digital music at some point, there's going to be some evolution of that.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely going to fade out at some point.
Now, the question I have about art is the in-person experience of art ever really going to fully go the way of the dodo? Because there is something truly spectacular about viewing art in person.
I don't think that it's going to go the way of the dodo. I think that what's going on is that the old system, the old guard of the way that things are set up with galleries is dying out. A lot of these galleries that are dying out are not using the resources that are available. They're not using the internet. Instead of dealing with the artist in a way where the artist now becomes a partner in the business, which is the way that galleries really should be set up, the artist comes in and is almost an employee of the gallery, when in fact the gallery would not exist if it wasn't for the artist. So when you're looking at that relationship, it really should be something that is combined, that they are partners in that business. The gallery gives them a brick and mortar location where people could come out and physically see the product. The gallerist is the one that is showing their artwork and making sure that it's a good fit for their customers, but the artist is the one that is creating the artwork. And that has always been a relationship where they both kind of needed each other.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it needs to be equal in the responsibility and equal in the benefits.
I think that over the years, the way that the gallery system was working, because they were pretty much the gatekeepers, that set them up for failure in this day and age. They didn't keep up with it. It's almost like they had the power of being able to decide which artists were going to be shown out there and which were not, and basically to change the landscape of the art world by saying this is what's new, this is what's good, this is what's great, and these other artists, we're going to ignore them. And in essence, getting a power that really did not belong to them. And that you see that happen in just about every single creative field. You have the person that is creating the thing, and then you have the person that is maximizing their earnings off of that other person's thing that they're creating.
Right, and it used to be that the tastemakers in any field were the ones who would give you the yay or nay, and all of us creatives were clamoring for their attention and approval. But in these days, when you can share whatever you're creating with a huge market just via social media, and you can make a name for yourself all on your own, definitely galleries should be paying attention to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's the thing, because the way that it was always set up. I mean, you have writers in Hollywood that get their scripts bought and then they have another writer come in and rewrite the script because the studio wants the story to be different, because one of the producers decides that their daughter saw elephants flying in a book and now this should be in the movie. Like, there have been immense amounts of rewrites based on the opinions of people that weren't the creative body of creating the thing. That's why sometimes you get really terrible movies that you're watching. You're like, this makes no freaking sense. And it's because there were a bunch of chiefs that were all clamoring to get their ideas in the movie, and none of it made sense with the original intent of it.
Yeah, and a lot of times you get that sense of like, it seems like this started off as a good story, like the story itself, but then like they just lost their way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You see this happen with a lot of creatives in just about every field. You have music industry companies telling the artists what kind of music they should be playing. You have movie studios telling the writers what kind of things, what kind of elements they need to put in their stories in order for it to work. You have galleries, big mega galleries, telling artists what it is that they need to create in order for them to be able to sell it.
And it's hugely apparent in the fashion industry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like money is motivating the entire culture. And so instead of the creatives being the ones that were leading the culture, the people that were producing it and making the money off of it were the ones that were pretty much leading where the tastes were going.
Which to me is super backwards.
It is super backwards because there is no innovation when it comes to that. Essentially, a music company or a gallery is going to go not based on where the trend is heading or what the next new big thing is going to be until after it's created. And so if they know that this particular style of art is very popular right now, they're going to try to crank out as many of that as possible in order to be able to maximize their profits on that versus what is the newest big thing. They're constantly chasing after what the next big thing is versus being the ones that actually produce it. And honestly, it's the artists that are outside of that circle that are the ones that create things that all of a sudden are the things that become popular.
Yeah.
You look at any of the big name artists from whether it's Warhol or Picasso or whatever, each one of these artists were met with disdain in the beginning of their careers when they were creating what they were creating and not being taken seriously for their art. And it wasn't until their persistence kicked in and they kept going and there was maybe one gallerist who decided that they were going to invest in that artist, that then they made it. And that's because the gallerists were the gatekeepers. So a lot of these careers got started because there was one gallerist who was looking at this thing that was completely different than anything else that was out there, and they had a vision for more in the future. But unfortunately, a lot of galleries don't work that way. A lot of galleries are working on trends. This is what's popular. This is what these people want. This is what works. And not saying that they're that shallow or anything like that, but because there's a lot of different galleries out there, and some galleries are way more creative than other galleries. But the ones that are closing are the ones that did not move with the times and realize that we need to take the power out of the gallery's hands and share it with the artists. They should have always been partners with the galleries. But at this point in time, we really need to consider what our relationship is like with the artists and really market ourselves the way that we need to market ourselves. It is a place where you could come out and have a tangible experience. That's what it's not just about selling the art. And I think that that's what's gotten lost with the market. Recently, Banksy's agent decided that he was going to close down his gallery and leave that whole life behind because he got sick and tired of the snobbery in the art world.
Yeah, I read
as
that.
He put it. Yeah. And that's what's going on right now. And he even says, like, it's more about the money than it is about the art. These mega galleries, it's more about the money, the art stock market, how much money they could line their pockets with, versus the art itself. It's almost like the art trends themselves are a secondary thing versus how much profit they can make off of the art.
Well, so I want to bring attention to something because mega galleries and mom and pop galleries, two totally different things. Mega galleries are not closing and suffering.
No, mega galleries are the ones that are causing a lot of the closures. Yeah.
Mom and pop galleries, I'm assuming, are who's suffering right now. And part of it, I imagine, is very difficult on the galleries' part because the overhead in some cases can be massive. And so as a gallery owner, I would imagine, yeah, of course you want to push what's popular as much as possible to try to keep your doors open, to try to compete with mega galleries. And a lot of the gallerists, like in Warhol's day, you mentioned, they had a more one-on-one personal relationship with their artists because they weren't competing with mega galleries at that time. The little galleries were kind of the it galleries.
Well, the thing about the mega galleries is that what you're dealing with when you're dealing with the mega galleries is they're the ones that are trading a lot of those old masters. And they're the ones that are also really, really on top of the trends. And they're also the ones that have enough staff to have a really good online presence. They already have a reputation. And really that's what it counts when it comes to that world, the art stock market world. Well, I know that this guy, this gallerist, is going to make me some money on my next art investment that I'm going to make. Mm-hmm. And so the problem is there is no comparison to the mega galleries. A lot of the galleries are now dead. Stuff is coming because they think that they're competing with the mega galleries. The fact is that they're not. If you have a gallery even in a small town, let's say like Pensacola, somebody were to open up a gallery and they were all about the experience of the gallery, not just making the sale, and putting together events every month, doing social outreach into the town, doing something eventful at the gallery every single month, or at least every other month, then you would have something that is more than, this is the place that I go to buy the artwork.
Mm-hmm. This is a full-on experience.
Yeah, it is a full-on experience because really that's what it comes down to. And so if you are partners with your artists and you and your artists are deciding what is the best way that we could put this show together to make it something quite amazing, I think that that's where the value is in having a gallery. I got a question yesterday. Somebody was like, is it normal for a gallery to charge 50%? Mm-hmm. And my thought was like, honestly, unless the gallery is your partner, there is no reason for the gallery to be charging you 50% or 35% or a large percentage like that. Because if you are just using the space to show your work and they don't have their own way of marketing or their own thing in order to bring business in, or they're not being having social outreach and doing different things in order to promote their own gallery, and they expect you, that happens with a lot of galleries. They expect the artists to be the ones that bring in the business, and
they still want 50%.
Yeah, and they still want to take 50%, or they want to charge you for the wall space, or they want to, and it's all about, it comes down to that bottom line. And I understand it's a brick and mortar location, you've got overhead, but you need to figure out a different way, because the way of the gallery in the past is dying out. And the reason it's dying out is because these galleries are not moving forward and understanding what their position is. It's not just get as much money as I can from the artist or get as much percentage as I can from the artist. It is, what is this experience all about?
Give the art collectors something they can't experience online.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's the same reason that movie theaters are suffering. And there's this whole thing about how movie theaters are going to be closing because people would prefer to watch movies at home now. And it's because movie theaters have lost sight of what the whole movie-going experience is supposed to be.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. It became about the bottom line. I worked in corporate. I worked in one of the movie theaters. And what I started to notice was the same thing that a lot of corporations do, is that they start to cut down on the hours. And so you don't have enough people working a theater. And then they, went up against the projectionist union and they got rid of these experienced projectionists and they started to hire employees to do the projection. So the movies don't get started on time, or the lights don't get shut off because they just don't have enough people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to a movie theater and your last two experiences were bad, you're not going to go back to the movie theater. It has nothing to do with whether or not the movies are good enough to bring people out.
Right.
It has to do with the experience itself. And I think that they've lost sight of that. They think that a movie theater is just a place where you go and you sit your butt down and you watch a movie. Well, you could do that at home.
For a lot less money and in more comfort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember in high school I had taken a business course and they were showing like these different businesses that were doing really, really well, comparatively speaking, to other businesses. One of them was a baseball field. And what this person at the owner of the baseball field realized was that it had nothing to do with the game itself. It had to do with the experience of the baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not the team is winning. It has to do with being a part of the culture. And so that baseball field, that stadium did extremely well. And of course, we all know it's Wrigley Field.
Absolutely.
You know, everybody goes to Wrigley, not because the Cubs are like a number, you know, they're most of the time they're the underdogs, but everybody goes to Wrigley because of the experience of Wrigley. And I think that people lose sight of that. And there's a lot of money, you know, they want to make money. There's a lot of money to be made when you are setting yourself apart from the competition because you actually are concerning yourself with what it is that the person wants and not what is the best way that I can make money. Oh, let me cut the hours here. Let me make sure that I could save some money on labor. Let me save money in this area. And you're losing sight of why you're doing what you're doing in the first place and what the experience is for somebody.
So I think what you're saying is the mom and pop galleries, or even not necessarily mom and pop galleries, the little galleries should not even concern themselves with the mega galleries because the mega galleries aren't selling any artists that are even alive. Yeah. They're trading the old masters, right?
Yeah, and if they are selling artists that are alive, they're basically just using them as a conveyor belt and they're just pumping out art.
So the mom and pop galleries should be focused on the relationships with the artists, because they're who are going to support the living artist if an artist chooses to go the gallery route, and offer something that the art buyer can't get anywhere else.
Exactly.
An experience.
Exactly. And speaking about the relationship with the artist, one of the things that is important to realize is that if the artist is getting screwed on, that's why I'm saying you should come in as partners, because in that case, then a 50% cut makes sense, because if the gallery is making money, the artist is making money, and if the artist is making money, then the gallery is making money. But if that relationship is unfair to the artist could have customers just contact him directly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If there is no loyalty there, if there is nothing that is building trust in the relationship with the gallery, and the gallery is just trying to make a quick buck, then you're going to lose that opportunity because the artist doesn't need you.
Absolutely. And I would say personally, I would never pay out a 50% commission unless there was more going on there. There was a relationship there.
Exactly.
There was trust there. There was the knowledge that the gallery cares about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm fortunate enough to say I have that relationship with one of the galleries. And the second gallery, which I just signed up for, is a co-op gallery, which is a different animal. They operate differently.
Yeah, that's a different animal.
But that'll be a story for another day.
When it comes down to it, us as artists, it's one thing to remember is like take a chapter from this book where you're looking at the galleries and the way that the old system is kind of falling apart because there is innovation and new stuff going on. But also remember, really at the end of the day, it always comes down to the experience of the person that is looking at your art. Mm-hmm. And I think that we lose that a lot because a lot of times when artists are coming to me, they're talking about the bottom line. They're talking about sales. They're talking about, well, what kind of art do I need to create in order for it to, do I create the popular stuff? Do I do this? Do I do that? And they're losing sight of what it means to experience art for the person that's buying it. Well, what are the trends? What are this? What are that? And really what it comes down to is you need to create something, whether or not you're just creating something because you think it's beautiful and you want to share that with the world, or you're creating something because you wanted to see it come to life, or you're creating something because it has some kind of deep meaning to you. No matter what, you need to create something that does have some kind of meaning to you, and it's something that you could share with the person individually. Somebody had left a comment, well, the thing is that it's better to get out into an area and just create the things that are popular because, nobody's interested in your stuff. You have to go with your market, with your consumer base. And my response to them was like, you don't know what your consumer base is. Just because there are people around doesn't mean that those are your consumers.
Right.
Your consumers are the people that are attracted to your particular art. That's how you build that consumer base. And yes, because you're not reaching out to the general public, you are basically looking for these people. These people, you're giving them an opportunity to find you. And they are a smaller grouping than just doing something that is popular across the board. But those are the people that are going to be loyal to you. Those are the people that want your work. They're not just buying this because it's a couple of blue flowers against a beige background. That's not why they're buying it. They're buying it because it's something that you created that spoke to them. And that's where you get loyalty in your consumer base. And that's what the experience is about to me. It's about the experience. It is not about the bottom line.
Absolutely. And that kind of following and collectorship can take some time to cultivate. But me personally, if I'm going to go see an art exhibit at a big gallery or a museum or a little gallery, I want to see something that maybe I've never seen before. I don't want to see the same things that I could go online and look for. And I want to feel something when I look at the art. Otherwise, why would I go?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. We want to see something. We want something thought-provoking. We want to feel something. We want an experience.
Yeah. And
we don't want to just go to whatever box store and peruse the art aisle for what's going to match our couch.
Exactly. And there are people out there that's what they do. Their extent is, go to Hobby Lobby and look at whatever prints they have there because it's a certain price and I need something to fill in this space. Some of those people in the future will become art collectors because they'll run across an artist that they love their stuff. And then at that point, the fake art that they have up on their walls is just not going to cut it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of collectors that are like that originally they collected art at big box stores. And then once they bought an original piece of art, it's like those old prints just didn't cut it anymore. Mm-hmm. And then they just bought more and more stuff from me over the years to replace those pieces. And I think that a lot of people think that it's just one person or the other, or they think to themselves like, oh, there aren't these people out there. And really what it comes down to is not about whether or not there are these people out there. It's about what experience do you have that you are giving them. So whether or not you're showing your artwork out in person, what is the experience that they're getting? If you're putting together a gallery show, when I did my gallery show, I do paintings, but I also created a sculpture that hung from the ceiling and created these wings that people could take a photograph in front of that was symbolic of my style. And that might seem cheesy and it might seem whatever, but it was part of the experience of being there. I had over 100 pieces of work and some of them were interactive and some of them were not. And I am generally a painter, but I wanted to create things that would make the experience much more than just going somewhere and looking at paintings.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be an experience. And because of that, it was a very popular show.
Yes, it was. People really enjoyed the experience and they came for the experience, something they couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Because that experience is what's going to put them in the right mindset to be able to look at the art that you've created, because it's a full-on immersive experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that we lose that. We think, that it's just about putting some artwork up and this person is just putting artwork up on their wall and it doesn't matter what they put up, but it's not like that. It's about the experience of the art. I think that the galleries that are closing down have lost sight of that. And I think that artists that are struggling, they either have not realized that yet, or they might have lost sight of that as well.
Whether you're a gallerist or an artist or a movie theater owner or a fashion industry creator or whatever, you need to think more about the experience rather than just pushing a product.
Yeah.
The experience of your creation or the experience of walking into your gallery, because there's endless opportunities for people to buy things.
Yeah.
And people are looking for experiences.
Yeah, they want that story to be able to tell that goes along with that piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a perfect example was when I was in the gallery, I was looking at a photograph. One of the photographers had a photograph up, and it was a photograph of a wolf. And, you know, my little mind was like, oh, it's a picture of a wolf. I've seen pictures of the wolves. You know, you could see pictures of wolves everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing really exciting. And so, like, I just kind of looked at that piece a little bit longer, and the photographer was there, and he came up and he told me about how he basically sat in the marsh for 3 hours, absolutely and completely still, watching this wolf from a distance, and could not move, and had to make sure that his scent wasn't upwind or whatever, and how he just sat there completely still for 3 hours to get that. There were 3 photographs that he got, and one of them is the one that I was looking at. That experience completely changed that photograph for me.
Gave you a new sense of appreciation.
Exactly. It gave me an absolutely new sense of appreciation. And I think that that's what people miss sometimes. They think that it's just about the sale, and it's not about the sale. It's about that experience.
Yeah, that's a good illustration of that point.
And that's it, you guys. Hopefully you got something out of this. I know that we were a little bit all over the place when it came to the talking about the galleries and talking about what we do as artists and things like that. It's just us giving our 2 cents as we sit here sipping our coffee.
I think we gave like 4 or 5 cents.
Yeah, there were probably about 4 or 5 cents. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, you guys. You guys are absolutely freaking amazing. I totally adore you. And we'll talk to you next Monday. Say goodbye, Clee.
Good day.
Adios.